What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Check Engine Podcast, the only podcast entirely produced by three winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award at the 2015 Salem 6 Hours to Glen.
Yes, we are.
Absolutely.
I am Nick. I'm joined by Tristan the Irish Viking.
Hello.
And Andrew the man who hates everything.
I'm excited to be here on the pink mic. I don't hate the pink mic. It's beautiful.
So he doesn't hate entirely everything.
That's right.
Close to everything.
Things that are pink he's okay with most of the time.
Most of the time. So, if you're listening, we want to take you through a little bit. This is the first episode. We want to take you through when you tune in, thank you, and what are you going to be listening to here. What we are. Well, we should probably start, I think, with what we are not. We are not automotive journalists. We do not write for magazines. We do not report for websites. We do not work for a certain car company or a certain race team. We are not in the industry at all. We are just simply fans of cars, fans of racing, fans of motorsports. It's just something we're passionate about. And all of the conversations that you're going to hear us having, we've already had them at tracks, in bars, in our living rooms, in underwater tents, at car shows, on road trips. And we simply want you to join in these conversations and be a part of it with us. You can find us on social, like us, share us, comment, and let us know what you think of these things. You guys ready to kick this off?
Absolutely.
So ready.
So ready. We'll kick it off with a section we like to call the Pace Laps, just a quick touch on news of the day or of the time period here. And the first one I want to talk about, or the only one I think I want to hit tonight, involves the president of Ford North America, Raj Nair, was pretty sacrimoniously fired.
Ousted.
He was ousted. He was ousted. He was sacked, basically at the drop of a hat over what the company is describing as, quote, inappropriate behavior. They're not going into what that behavior was at this time, but given the climate right now, I know where my mind goes first. I don't know what you guys think about that. But
yeah, that's something that I'm sure somebody else is podcasting at this point, but we kind of know where that's going at this point. So we can make our assumptions and move on to implications.
It's good that he's gone. I mean, that's
yes.
It's good.
Yes.
If it's what we think it is or what we're assuming it is, it's never safe to assume. But if it's that,
any type of inappropriate behavior should not be rewarded. But implications of the ouster, I think, are something that is a little bit more in our wheelhouse for a fan podcast about things that go fast.
Things that go fast. He was replaced pretty quickly by the chief marketing officer / head of the Lincoln brand. And they were, what was that over there?
No, go ahead, keep going. That's a surprising move, I think, but we'll talk about it. Keep going.
Yeah, and the rationale behind that was because the board was impressed with the resurgence of the Lincoln brand. I don't know what that means.
I have definitely seen Lincolns. I saw them at the auto show. I saw one on the road.
It was probably the same one that I saw on the road.
It was black.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Black Lincoln.
The one black Lincoln in our area.
Absolutely.
So they were impressed with the visibility of that black Lincoln. Maybe. I don't know what that does. Does that mean they were like the number 9 brand in the country and they went to 8? Like, what does the resurgence of Lincoln mean?
I really couldn't tell you.
Maybe YouTube views.
Or how about this?
They nailed Matthew McConaughey for commercials.
That you know what? That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Well, I mean, when you look at things like motorsport, it's about talent development. I mean, he can draw in big names like Matthew McConaughey. I mean, maybe he can wrangle in some big drivers.
Maybe they're going to rebrand the GT40 as a Lincoln.
Oh man, that would be terrible.
That would be awful.
It's
a horrible idea.
That'd be so
Ford,
bad.
if you're listening, don't take my ideas.
But that was the question I had of this about this topic that I wanted to bring up to you guys. Raj Nair was the guy who spearheaded Ford's return to endurance racing with the Ford GT program. You see it all the time as companies get new leadership. The vision and the direction of these companies change. What does this mean for this Ford GT program? Is it even going to be around in a couple of years? Do you think? I mean, what are you guys' thoughts?
I think you see a change in, the attitude or kind of the focus of a company, but I think, especially in motorsport, you don't see changes in leadership scrap relatively successful programs overnight. I mean, I think there's going to be a certain amount of wait and see on this. I think we've got the Ford GT that was 2 years.
It was a 2-year commitment, and I think they just re-upped for another 2.
Yeah, so
Don't quote me on it, but I think they're in through at least 2019.
So we're through 2 years on a relatively unchanged platform for the Ford GT that's seen some pretty good success. So I think that, as an advertising tool without tremendous amounts of investment, you're going to get tweaks and stuff like that to the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you're going to have to see a major redo of it from the ground up or start racing an entirely different type of vehicle. I think we'd be pretty safe in seeing the GT for at least another couple of years. I mean, obviously, contract stuff will force their hand in a certain way, but I think you're going to see it. It's popular. It's immensely popular. You look at it at the auto show. You look at it on the paddock at races. It's mobbed every single time, and I think
gorgeous car.
And there's nothing that can equate to that for advertising, at least.
I think it goes away. I think, would you say 2019, so it'd be like the 1920 racing season?
So like after Petit Le Mans in October of 2019 would be the go or no go time.
So it's not gonna. So you're saying we're not going to see it in 2020?
I think it goes away. I think it goes away in 2019 because the GT 40 or Ford GT, whatever we want to call it, while that is a car that Ford brings out now and then, and gets everyone all excited, and we're releasing a new GT, and it's this and it's that, fastest car in the world, or it's a track monster. They're never around for long. They're always here and then they're gone. So how far into that cycle are we now? And it could just be one of those things of convenience where 2019's over, the GT's been around. Yes, it's been very popular, but if you take it away, then when you bring it back again in 2024, we got a brand new GT, it's all electric or whatever it is, then it keeps that mystique. Sort of tailing it off a little bit, and I think that it's hard for any brand to mimic what Chevy and GM have in the Corvette, and I definitely don't think that the GT has that same continuous mystique where it's always there, it's every year. So I definitely think it's going to go away.
I agree, and the reason, just to add on to what you were saying, if the idea behind this GT here, if you remember, was they wanted it ready by 2016 because that was the 50th anniversary of the Ferrari killer.
That's right.
They number the cars 66, 67, 68, 69. Those are the 4 years in a row they won Le Mans. This was essentially, it was a marketing play. It was 50th anniversary. We're going to come out with a new car, and it just so happens that they won on their 50th anniversary. It was only a 2-year commitment originally. I think the fact that the balance of performance have been in their favor as they've gone along. I mean, they've gotten a lot of concessions.
Concessions regarding development. They were able to develop and run the car before even producing a road-going version, homologating a road-going version.
They got a lot of special favors to make this happen. It was a lot of marketing scheme, just as much as it was a car building and racing project.
And highly successful.
And I think the reason they re-upped for a couple more years is because I believe the success even surprised them a little bit.
I can see that.
So they want to keep that. We're riding this wave and want to keep that momentum rolling.
I think we're seeing too. I mean, I don't think that's anything that we're saying doesn't contradict each other. I don't think it overlaps entirely, but I'm saying I think we're gonna see it at least through the end of its contract, because why not ride the advertising wave that is the GT at least through as long as they've committed and it's very popular. But I don't disagree that I think you could see it ride off into the sunset to maybe return again in the future. That mystery is definitely something that can
The-
keep
the
people
to be
watching.
continued
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
part of this.
The
is-
Ford GT will return in at the end of the movie,
Like James Bond, yeah.
Just like James Bond.
But so given that, assuming that we can see the sunset of the Ford GT, do you think that any of that? Because I think when you look at Ford, you've got pretty popular work that they're doing in NASCAR and Formula stuff in Europe, things like that. But you don't really think of a lot of Ford products in my particular favorite type of racing, sports car, endurance racing, things like that. Do you think we're going to see them potentially offload that to the newer Mustang platforms? I mean, I think since we started going years ago, you're starting to see the Multimatic guys, things like that, popping up in places that they hadn't before. Are we going to see that motorsports marketing push back into sports cars again?
I think there's going to be, just because the GT3 and GT4 platforms are so popular right now, I think they might focus a lot of the dollars that way. And if I'm not mistaken, weren't they talking about a focus in the TCR category as well?
I think you're right. Actually, just for people like me who don't necessarily know about racing, so we're talking sports car in America. We're talking about Pirelli World Championship. We're talking about the IMSA Series and Continental.
Tire Sport.
Yeah, Continental
Sports
Tire.
Championship.
And the TCR class would be where the new
Ford.
Was it Focus or Fiesta? That was going to be in that
It
class.
definitely started with an F.
Yeah, that it did.
Comment
It was probably.
and share, folks. Let us know if you know the answer. Like I said, we're definitely not journalists or professionals.
I think that. Well, is the Multimatic a Ford sponsored team?
They're essentially, that Ford dubbed them to run some of their factory programs.
Because they just brought out the last year the Mustang,
Mustang.
GT4, whatever, with the race package one.
And Multimatic also runs the the Ford GT program in Europe that runs the World Endurance Championship.
Gotcha.
Chip Ganassi runs it in the United States for IMSA,
Mm-hmm.
but Multimatic runs it overseas.
Okay.
So they've been partnered with Ford for a long time.
I think they could. One thing that I think ties into that, and while I don't necessarily know how long Raj was a CEO, I would wonder, because I've been reading a lot about sales of Ford's cars declining, and they're kind of sitting there going, why aren't our cars selling? When you look at the Fiesta and you look at the Focus and you look at everything in their lineup, they're all 10 years old at this point. They look, they were great cars when they were around.
They look 10 years old.
But they really do, especially in the interiors, and it's kind of like they're all standing around going, what are we supposed to do? Our cars aren't selling. Well, of course they aren't. They're old, and everyone knows. So I'm wondering if that could couple with them introducing a new line of those smaller cars, bringing a new Fiesta into Pirelli or into wherever they want to, kind of market. I'd be interested to see if that happens, because they need new cars.
Let's not forget they also have the focuses in rally and rally cross too, so they're not just focusing on road racing when they're outside of NASCAR.
That's true.
And that's actually the more popular form of motorsport with the younger fan base. So, it remains to be seen. Folks, let us know what you think. What's going to happen to the GT? Your thoughts, your opinions on this Ford story. I think it's time to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of what this episode is going to be about.
Yeah.
And folks, it's only fitting, first episode in a car podcast, guys, it's got to be about your first car, right?
Absolutely.
It's got to be about your first car.
Oh, love it.
Not only our first cars, but like the whole idea, what makes a first car special to society, right? Like, you can't run across a single person who doesn't remember their first car.
Absolutely.
The stories about it, how much of a pile of crap it was.
That thing where you're driving at night in your brand new car and you're like, oh man, I miss that piece of shit.
I was a badass back then. In my '97 Tahoe.
Was that your first car?
That was my first car.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
I have fond memories of the '97 Tahoe.
Everybody has fond memories of the '97 Tahoe. Who knew me back then? Andrew, we met a little bit.
Yeah,
later.
not me.
Not you. You missed out, man.
I guess. Tell me. I want to hear it.
Okay, so a red '97 Chevy Tahoe, big ass V8 in there, like 2 miles per gallon.
He had to be standing still to reach, any sort of double-digit fuel economy.
Beautiful.
Just idle, like waiting for a train to pass, you might hit 10 miles per gallon. And it didn't have the door that opened like bottom up. It was a barn door in the back.
Oh no!
It was the one that opened like an actual door.
I was having a little trouble thinking of the body style, but now that you've said that, I know exactly what car. Yeah. Okay.
That thing was awesome. It's still around. It's actually still in our family too.
Oh no.
We have cousins in another state who have kids. Younger than I was, so when they got to be driving age, we sent it down there, and every time I see them, and it's not often they're in another state, we see them a couple times a year, they always make sure to tell me, hey, Big Red is still running.
Big Red still
Big
running.
Red is still running. I raced a Mustang with the Tahoe.
What generation of Mustang? I need details.
What generation? It was
one of those Fox bodies.
It was like an early '90s Mustang.
Yeah.
If you
So just post.
Yeah, just after.
And it was a good buddy of mine in high school. He saved up his money, and it was actually a very, very nice Mustang. And he took care of it like anytime, like he'd drive to school in it, drive home, and then wash it and wax it, and then the next day he'd do the same thing.
Was that his first car?
We might have to ask him, but I think it might have been actually.
Still on
It's
topic.
not bad, yeah.
It's still on topic. Way to go, Tristan. But we were at another friend's house who lived on a cul-de-sac, and I was kind of ribbing my friend a little bit because of the fact, and rightfully so. But he just babies this car. And we eventually decided on, all right, you're gonna talk all this shit. Let's go out and race right now. And I'm like...
As you do when you're in high school.
When you're indestructible. By the way, never street race. It's a horrible... Do not ever street race. It's so dangerous.
Yeah.
You will definitely die.
This was a really dumb idea, everybody. It seriously was. Because not only was it a street race, but it was through a neighborhood.
This is the kind of things that they show you about in driver's ed videos.
Yes. And
Children
then you're like, that's a really good idea.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Don't. It's not a good idea.
So,
anyways.
We lined up in his cul-de-sac.
Sorry, just chills.
Just chills. And we had the buddy whose house it was like the Need for Speed or Fast and the Furious girl with like the rag.
He tied his shirt up?
He didn't tie his shirt up. Thank
missed
God.
opportunity.
Thank
It's
God
fine.
he didn't tie his shirt up. But he had the rag and he dropped it, and we essentially did a lap around his subdivision. And I knew, because it was who he was driving the car he was driving, he was going to baby the hell out of it. So I went for it, man. I just gunned it.
Oh, no.
I mean, I was running wide on corners where it was like a close call to my driver's side mirror and mailboxes. And yeah, made it around, and regardless of the circumstance and who was driving, I beat a Mustang in a 97 Chevy Tahoe in a race.
This is why, as I'm sure we will expand upon later, he is the only one with any type of racing history whatsoever.
That's really important, actually.
Important note.
These are the kind of instincts given to the natural-born racing driver versus the rest of us. I'm going to race a Mustang in a 1997 Chevy Tahoe.
And win handily.
Yeah, and win
And
handily.
I'm going to win. I didn't just say I was going to race him. I said I was going to beat him.
Exactly. Not only that, I'm going to win a race against a Mustang in a 1997
Chevy Tahoe.
bright red Chevy Tahoe.
That's right, bright red. Let's not forget. I also took people parking lot surfing in it.
Oh, oof.
Because it was big enough.
Throwback, yeah.
Especially I worked at a local department store in high school, and we'd close up, and it'd be like 11 o'clock at night, and our cars were the only ones in the parking lot. And in winter up here where we're at, it gets pretty icy, so people would get on top, and I would do donuts. With my 97 Chevy Tahoe.
Oh, man.
And I mean, the big V8 was barking away, and
Do we have lawyers?
No.
Okay.
We're too
Okay.
we're too
new
low
for
budget for
that.
that. Right?
Yeah, we're gonna.
So should I shut up? Should we get to somebody else's
No, I
stories?
think we're fine. As there's something about a disclaimer. don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't do this. We'll put the jackass thing on the front of the podcast.
I also am going to need to start looking up statutes of limitations for Nick, apparently.
I think I'm in the clear. It's been a while.
As he's doing GTA around the Greater Lake Country area.
We will find out if anybody listens to this podcast and they are in law enforcement.
That's right.
So
comment.
Please comment. Please comment and share your thoughts. That was my first car. Never gonna forget it.
Tristan, I think you should go next because mine's like a little bit of a subtle flex, and I don't want anyone to feel bad, but I should go last.
A subtle flex.
Just a little bit.
So you're automatically assuming that yours is the best.
Well, here's the thing. I'll give you a little preview. My first car, fiberglass body, GM product, manual transmission. That's all I'll say for now. 2-door. It's fine. You can go next.
It's gonna be Cobalt.
I know. I happen to know what this is. I won't spoil anything for you.
It's a little bit of a flex. It's fine. You can feel a little intimidated.
Imagine what he's talking. For anybody who is a car person, remember, fiberglass body, manual transmission, GM product. First thing that comes to mind. We'll see what you think. we'll come back to that in a minute.
It's fine. It was a first car.
All right, Andrew's going last. Tristan.
Versus mine, which...
getting complicated.
We had some questions about this pre-podcast. So we're talking about first cars, and I of course ask, being lucky, being provided with cars. I was never tasked with purchasing my own. I was not allowed to because I would buy something like a 1997 Tahoe or a fiberglass GM product, which my mother would immediately take away from me because she's sure I would kill myself with it. So initially, my family, when I got my driver's license, we had 3 drivers and 2 cars, and there was no separate car just for me, so I ended up driving their cars. She was sure I would kill myself in a 97 Tahoe or a fiberglass GM product. Meanwhile, she was not sure I would kill myself in a 4.2 liter V8 Audi A6 sedan that could easily go probably 200 miles an hour if you took the governor off of it. So, that was my father's car.
Tell me again why Andrew's going last.
Right? So, talking about a little bit of a flex, right? But that was the one option. That was my father's car. That was his reward for being a stay-at-home parent. He used to joke he would get paid in large German sedans.
Oh, and the color, that green on
deep
there.
Green.
I love that
deep
car.
forest green, and it was an Audi A6 with, because of the V8 in the front, which was not standard at all on that and several other model years for it. Actually had the most of the front end was actually A8 front end. So it was a lot of aluminum, a lot more space to get that V8 in there. Basically an Audi A8 front end and a big, wide butt on an Audi A6.
Thick. It was THICC before that word was ever around. It was a thick car.
It set that definition before anybody knew that's what
Absolutely.
it was called. And so that's how you could tell. It always had this kind of crouch and a big back end and a little bit longer and wider front end because it was an A8 front end. So that car was magnificent. Again, speaking about things that shouldn't be done, it was my go-to car to surprise the absolute bejesus out of people in Mustangs and Camaros and
or the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah,
kids.
let's say we grew up. We were starting to drive when Fast and the Furious was huge. So some guy in a Honda Civic with way too much exhaust was kind of the prime target.
You can call it a fart can. It's not gonna
for people.
insult
I think it's way too much exhaust.
Plus 5 horsepower though.
That's also the stripes are 2, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
one for each.
Yeah.
One for each stripe.
So, but that was the primary prey of somebody in a 4.2 liter V8 Audi A6. Especially if you start adding wet pavement, snow. It's an all-wheel drive car, and it was just a blast to drive. You could do, 4-wheel donuts on it in the parking lot. You could do, things that are unimaginably fast and don't feel fast because the car is designed to go Autobahn speeds, things like that.
And let it be known that Tristan grew up in a spot that was so fun to drive in. You had to drive through a state forest to get to his house.
Yes.
So 2-lane, windy roads for something like an Audi like that is just bliss.
And I'm sure we'll cover this again in a future podcast, but for anybody who is a racing fan is familiar with Elkhart Lake, that's not where I live, but that's what I live in. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that terrain, that Kettle Moraine terrain is the exact kind of thing that you drive through to get to my house. It was magnificent. The other option,
Yeah, that's not the car. That's not the car I know as your first car.
Right. The other option was an A4 sedan, and there were two of those and an A4 station wagon in my life at one point or another. But the other first car that I had access to was my mom's 1.8 liter turbocharged A4, and in my mind, that was never my mother's car. That was a rally car. From the second I saw that car, that was a rally car. That one was find a gravel road, find the snow, and it's small, it's light, it's all-wheel drive, and it was a blast to drive. But both of them were, kid tested, mother approved, because they had all-wheel drive.
Safe.
And, it was very safe. And, I mean, they were. I mean, if I had ever overstepped my bounds of, a high school kid with way too much car, I would have been safe. Luckily, I was raised right. Thanks, Dad. Shout out there. And was taught how to drive, and I've never gotten myself in trouble with that kind of thing. But the pride and joy, the first car that was strictly mine. I had the keys to it. I could take it whenever I wanted. Another A4 sedan, the 2.8 liter V6 version.
That's right. Oof.
No,
I forgot about that.
Yep. So not for sticking with the Fast and the Furious, idea. Not as tunable. Couldn't just crank up the boost and put out a bunch more horsepower. But
or add a couple stickers.
Yep. But no turbo lag. Just much more torque than my mom's 4-cylinder one. It was my first car. As Nick said, no, everybody remembers their first car. It's my pride and joy. It met an untimely end.
I was just going to ask, what happened to your car?
And it wasn't my fault. According to the insurance company, it was not my sister's fault either. She was driving it at the time. It was piled into by the Wisconsin State Animal. Is it the Wisconsin State Animal? It definitely should.
Absolutely.
Definitely should be.
Your sister got hit by a badger?
No, a white-tailed deer.
No, the real one.
The real one, not the one.
Animal?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The real estate animal sells you houses.
Nice.
No, it was plowed into by an entire herd of deer, and there was a lot more that happened during that whole process. But untimely end when she set off every single airbag in the car, thus totaling it.
Right.
But you should see the deer.
I drove a whole fleet of Audi sedans for my first cars, and I consider myself incredibly lucky. It was something that I can kind of strive to attain for the whole rest of my life and may never get there. So it's something that...
Who knows? Maybe this podcast gets really successful.
Could be huge.
Hashtag fund my Audi.
Right.
Oh my God. Hashtag fund my Audi.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But that was my first car. Those were my first cars. You can debate, what qualifies as a first car. It was the first ones you drove a lot, first ones you had the keys to, things like that. But that was mine.
Nice. Andrew, you teased us.
Let's let it breathe for a second. We need the
It's not wine, it's a car.
You're just determined not to be cool about this. All right. So we had the teaser. Yeah. We had the teaser trailer.
Zero chill, guys. It's okay.
All right, fine. Here's what it was. I'll give you a little more of a teaser. So we've already established fiberglass 2-door GM product, manual transmission in the middle, pop-up headlights. You all already know that it's a Saturn SC1. Yeah. That's right, the Saturn SC1.
For those of you thinking Corvette, remember... Well, don't remember anything. That is a Corvette, actually, at the time. Was basically just a rebodied
That's true,
Saturn
actually.
SC, right?
They've never made a better car, or a more important one. And for those of you who don't remember Saturn, they're not around anymore. They were the brand where you could just walk in and pretend that the price on the sticker was like a good price for the car. I mean, those never work out. But anyways.
Yeah, see Scion.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yes, Saturn was the General Motors Scion.
Yep,
there
absolutely.
You go. Good analogy.
But we need to talk about the SC because it was perfect.
Why? Show your work, Tully.
Absolutely. Here's what it is. It was $500. I bought it myself. And of course, having the manual transmission, I think you have to have that in a first car, in my opinion, because that's a skill you need. And it's important to me. I think it makes driving.
As a driver myself, yes, I agree, but I don't think it's a skill everybody needs.
I do.
Hi, the mayor of Hypocritville here. I think it's tremendously important. Also, I don't know how to do it.
That's
So do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. So this car, for those of you who don't know the Saturn SC, it's tiny. I drove past one in the parking lot the other day just by, I hadn't seen one in forever, and I was like, oh my God. It's the smallest car ever made. And fiberglass, it's almost a 2+2 because the back seats were so small and the middle one was so narrow. I remember I was in jazz band at the time and I played Barry sax. The car is so narrow, you cannot fit a Barry sax case, which is about 4 feet long, in the trunk. I had to put down my back seats and slide it through the car
Like
to
a
get
set of
it in
golf
there.
clubs.
Exactly. It's the tiniest thing. And you guys can talk all you want about doing donuts in the snow. That car was so light I could do it in the rain with new tires. It weighed 8 pounds. And
Curb weight, 8 pounds.
oh yeah, it was. It's that sweet famous Saturn 1.9 liter engine.
Famous?
To who?
Everyone? No.
No.
Oh well, okay.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll say famous. It is now.
That's
Everyone's going to listen to this podcast.
Because there's
and they will
one
all
more
know.
person at least who knows about it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, 2 of us now. We know about it.
That's right.
Oh, that cuts me. But anyway, okay. So here's a genuine question. Do you remember the name of the color of your first car? Not so you said it was red, but do you remember the name of the color?
Oh.
You know,
I can't say. No, I can't say.
it definitely had one. Every car
Every
company
car has
has
a
it. It was
goofy-
probably like Sunrise Crimson or something. Do you remember what yours was?
I remember 2 out of 3.
Okay,
I
that's
do
good.
not remember the green of my dad's car. I'm sure you talk about that cut you.
Yeah.
Sure that cuts him. However, I remember
Dad.
I remember my mother's car was reflex silver.
Ooh.
Reflex silver.
Yep, and my car was just one word, but how high class, how haute cuisine. It was champagne,
Oh boy.
otherwise known as metallic beige. It was metallic beige, to be honest.
Champagne.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about this car. All of these, companies go through, I'm sure, months of research to find the names for these colors. The actual color of my car, the name of the color, was red. The paint code was red.
After hours of
I'll
research,
say they paid somebody a lot of money to come up with that.
hours of research, the person naming your car's color finally found a dictionary.
Yes.
And went, hey,
That's
that's
red."
red.
That's red.
That's like the guy who wrote the Hot Pocket jingle.
Yeah, absolutely. But the first car, it's everything to a kid of that age. I remember the first time I ever drove that car. I bought it before I could legally drive it. I bought it right at like 15 in a month.
How'd you get it home?
My dad drove it home.
Oh, good.
Again, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. And so it sat in our driveway for 6 months until I was 15 and a half. I could get behind the wheel. My dad and I went out. It was a wintry night in December. And I crashed into a snowbank at no miles an hour because the road was slightly icy. And you just couldn't stop that car. You would have to get out and stand in the front of it to stop it. So
Because it was only 8 pounds.
Exactly. We're just
Right.
sliding. The slowest accident ever. I think it took 4 minutes from the time I realized we were going to crash until we actually did. And then you just go thunk into the snow.
For anybody who's not from a snowy state, snow driving is a balance between not enough weight and too much weight. Enough weight will push your tires down through the snow to the asphalt or the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to stop and turn. Too much, you will just continue to slide. You've got too much momentum, and not
Yep.
enough, you won't dig down through the snow. An 8-pound car, you
Yep.
said? An 8-pound car, that's not enough weight.
It was not.
It's
No,
not-
no.
So that was the only accident I ever had, and that's the first time I ever drove it. And then I was, obviously terrified to drive it until the snow had cleared off the roads. But
I want you to share your experience of learning to drive stick. How easy was it? How did it go?
I was 12 years old.
Oh, really?
When the first time I drove a stick, I was 12. I remember I had gone with my dad to church.
Again, cops, please comment if you're listening.
Yeah, definitely. Is this legal? But no, we were in the church parking lot. For some reason, we had stayed. I think it was like CCD weekend or whatever. So we had stayed, and there weren't that many people in the parking lot. They're all clearing out. And he's like, "Hey, you want to drive the car?" And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, drive the car." Because you're a kid, and it's exciting. It's all you want to do as a small child. So I remember, the seats crammed all the way up to the front, and his car at the time was a pink, and it was pink. It's okay that it was pink.
Just
Ford
like our
Escort.
microphone.
Right, exactly. You know what?
That's why Andrew
funny.
likes the microphone.
It was this exact color. I shit you not. It was exact color.
We will post a picture of our microphone.
At some point.
Yeah, so it was a pink Ford Escort with a manual transmission, and I remember him sitting next to me explaining what you need to do.
Did that come with a Barbie doll?
Dad did it.
I don't think Dad's gonna
He
answer
can't
that
hear
stuff.
you
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
live.
But yeah, I remember hearing him explain what you need to do and how you need to manipulate the clutch and the gas. And I know that I got it eventually. I don't remember what it was like driving it the first time, other than the fact that obviously I killed it a bunch. And so that was when I was young, and then I really never drove stick again until I got that car. But that's muscle memory that really doesn't go away. Once you know what you're doing, I remember with that Saturn, I didn't kill it until like a year after I had initially gotten it. I remember I was driving to school one morning and just killed it in a left turn lane. You know, that thing where you're not really paying attention and you just yank your foot off the clutch and it dies.
Happens to the best of us.
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily struggle with learning manual on the Saturn, but I do remember very clearly learning how to drive stick. Something you don't forget because you feel like a total idiot, especially because you're with someone who's done it. And
They do know how.
You know they got you there. You watched them do it, and it's then you just you feel like such a loser. Also because they laugh, like it's really funny when people kill their car, and you can't help but laugh, and it's not helpful.
It's not helpful at all.
No.
High pressure situation. Nick, I remember you telling me the story, one of them, some of your earliest stick driving experiences was in another General Motors product.
Yes.
The one most of you were probably
We're
thinking about.
of when Andrew was describing his first car. My first stick shift experience was in a 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray split window. My dad had bought it, man, way before he even met my mom. Like he went halvesies in it with his dad and my grandpa. Just kept it. Who knew the value of it was going to get where it did?
Yeah.
But I learned to drive stick in a hotel parking lot on a 50-year-old clutch.
So do those? I mean, does that make it obviously more sudden and a little rougher in the actual transmission? But
It had 8 miles of play, and it did all its work in the final 2 centimeters.
Of course. But is it as hard to kill the old ones as it is to kill the new ones? Because really, with a newer Corvette, you can pretty much just yank your foot off the clutch, and it probably won't die.
Clutches now are, I mean, yes, if it's your first time, clutches are, in the modern day cars, I think are a little more idiot proof.
Well, yeah, because they've got anti-stall.
Anti-slip,
Right.
other stuff.
Yeah.
There was none of that in the 63. Like it was all your left foot in those last 2 centimeters that you had to get dialed in.
Driver aids are entirely turned off.
Yeah, there are no driver aids.
Sure.
The driver aids, what are those in the 60s?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
A bigger steering wheel. So
the steering wheel, by the way, the steering wheel on that thing was huge. It was like they just like bolted a basketball hoop onto the steering column.
And a kid trying to drive with that
It was like a bus.
That's funny.
It was a great experience. Well, not at the time it wasn't, but looking back on it now, it was really fun. And then I remember when I finally got it, like in the parking lot, my dad made the unfortunate decision to let me go out on the road with it.
Oh boy.
And and there's a stoplight near where I grew up, and it's on an overpass, or at the beginning of an overpass, and there's a slight hill.
Oh.
And so we stop, and, I got the clutch in, and, he said, okay, now, because you're on an incline, this thing is going to want to roll backwards, so you're going to need to keep your foot on the brake longer, and you're going to need to rev it up a little bit. And I was in traffic now. I wasn't in the safety of a parking lot.
Oh, jeez.
I was so scared of killing it in public that when I saw the light starting to change, I sounded like a drag racer before the tree went out. Like I pinned it. I absolutely pinned it. And when the light turned green, I just dumped the clutch.
Oh, anybody who's a Corvette fan, shield your ears.
I'm sorry, guys.
That poor clutch.
I'm so sorry. It launched into a burnout where I had to actually correct the steering, like the torque was pulling the rear end around, and I saved it and I kept it straight. And then I looked in the rearview mirror. The car directly behind me was a police officer.
Lovely, lovely.
And I think maybe the officer, whoever you are, thank you. I think he looked in and saw my dad doubled over laughing and realized it was a kid just learning.
Realized that your father was actually practicing a joke upon you.
Yeah. That's right.
We're gonna teach this kid in a 50-year-old clutch, see how he does. But yeah, but it's been easier ever since. I actually tried it on a new Corvette, and one time I wasn't paying it, or newer, not a brand new.
Yeah.
And I wasn't paying attention at some point, and I actually, instead of putting it into first of the stoplight, I put it into third, and there was so much torque, I didn't even notice.
Wasn't bothered.
Away we go. So, way easier now on today's cars.
Yeah, I mean, that's my only experiences on today's cars. I don't really know how to drive one. I know how to move a car with a manual transmission, but that's about it.
Hold the clutch and hope for gravity.
Yep.
And you ride a motorcycle too. So
yeah, I mean,
you know the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I know the concept. You get a little bit of, charity from a motorcycle because that's a submerged clutch that's covered in oil. You really can't burn them out. I'm sure you could if you tried, but it's very, very hard. But I did a 1 to 2 to 3 gear change, and then up and down between 2 and 3 around an autocross course when I was doing some kind of defensive, driving courses that were all Audi sponsored. You might be sensing a theme here. And then my roommate's Ford Focus was definitely something that we were kind of fighting to make sure it was the right place in the block to stop the Milwaukee police from towing it or ticketing it. And whenever he'd be gone for too long, I'd have to move his car. And that was only into first.
Right.
First and then back down again, and then, maybe you kill it when you park, but hey, you're parking, so who cares? So, nothing doing for me.
So, we've talked about our first cars, and for sure everybody, what made your first car special? What were some crazy stories? What did it look like? What did it run like? How did it die, if it died? Be sure to comment on our social pages and everything. What about, because everybody remembers their first car, right? I already said that. So what about the idea of this first car in society? What makes it so romantic? What makes it so special?
That's freedom.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty universal.
Yeah, but it's the most absolute form of freedom where even though you can, it's that thing where you used to say, oh, I'll just run away,
And you could run away as far as you could walk in about an hour or so before you got tired.
Exactly.
When you were a kid.
When you packed your teddy bear in your suitcase and left.
Yeah, and a thing of Oreos. Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. But then suddenly
the essentials.
You reach this magical age, and it is very special when suddenly you have the ability to access the whole world.
I'm driving from my house to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, and I'm running away. You'll never find me.
Right.
That's only possible with a car.
Right. A pilot, but...
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot about this, and I remember when I got the keys to the Tahoe, after my dad made sure I had a job first so I could buy the oil tanker full of gasoline that the thing needed. I distinctly remember that was the time in my life when I stopped asking my parents if I could go places.
Yep.
It wasn't, hey, can I go to Tristan's house? Hey, can I go see a movie? It was, I'm going to Tristan's house. I'm going to see a movie. I'll be back later. And the thing was, there was no kickback. They're like, all right.
Here's something that's so wild about that. I mean, we all got our licenses around the time. Yes, there were cell phones. Yes, they were pretty popular, but did you have one when you had your car?
Oh, no, I did not.
I did not either.
I don't think I did.
I mean, I think I got one.
It was pretty close.
Yeah, maybe
because
like,
my mom realized, like, hey,
yeah,
we're gonna need to keep track of this.
Got to
kid.
put a stop to
We
that.
couldn't- yeah, we
If
couldn't
you
pull
don't
that
know
one.
why, folks, listen to the story I originally told about the Tahoe. That is one danger, not a danger, I don't know how I want to put this, but like, it's like your first step closer to, one step closer to growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
you
freedom
get- you
and
get-
responsibility.
For people who, let's face it, at that age are not going to be that responsible.
Oh God, no.
So there's a little bit of inherent danger there. But yeah, I distinctly remember that was the age when now I stopped asking for permission for things.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's a landmark where other people definitively see that you are older. You are not necessarily an adult because you're still 16, but you have accomplished this and everybody knows it. No matter where you go, you have that little piece of plastic or you have the physical item, the car, that's yours. You did this.
It's one of those major milestone life events where you can point to at this age, there was a change. Because, like, you, especially people who are around you a lot, that you don't notice that you're aging. It's like, okay, I'm 15 and a half, 16, whatever your state allows. Boom, I can drive now. There's a watershed moment there. There's, it's followed by 18 for a bunch of stuff, 21 for a bunch of stuff, 25 to rent a car without getting the money just pulled out of everywhere they can pull money.
Right.
That one's less important. But there are many, many life milestones, but this is kind of one of the first big ones that begins to identify you as a person, especially if you're not given a car. If you purchase a car, if in the case that you do purchase a car, then you're making that choice. When you're given a car, often that can then imprint on you for the rest of your life because much like first love, first girlfriend, whatever, you're always going to remember that car, and you're almost always going to remember it fondly because it was the first one. So to this day, like I mentioned earlier, my life goal would be to get back in an Audi, but it's something that I still remember fondly.
And what you just said about defining yourself as a person, think about it right now, the car you're driving now, how close is it to your first car?
Immensely close.
How close is it to your first car?
Close enough. I mean, it
might be a different brand.
It's
but
closest to the car that I ended up in after this whole series of Audis. Ended up in a wagon version of it, and that's where it wasn't the first car, rose-colored glasses, love of my first car. It was the first one that, independent of that, was the first car I really loved outside of my first car, and it's much like that one. So it's close enough. It's very, very similar.
And I bet if you unless someone who is enormously wealthy and can just afford to buy whatever the hell he or she wants, if you ask around, I bet that is probably a common theme, that at some point they kind of revert back to what it was like in that first car. I'd be willing to, if I were a bigger betting man than I was, I might be willing to throw some money down on that if we were to do a survey.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. I mean, my cars, I went back to a manual transmission in my newest car just because.
Manual transmission, 2-ish doors.
Yeah, two or so doors.
Depending on who you ask.
It's just one of those things that you can't ever forget. I mean, even if you hated your first car, and my wife hated her first car.
Very rare.
And, well, it was a Chevy Cobalt.
Okay, so not so rare.
Not so rare. And I think that separately, that specific car would be a good topic for us to talk about just because it's wild.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, it did definitely shape what she thinks about cars, how she feels about them, and even if that thing is, I will never ever buy a Chevy again, it still shaped what she thinks about cars, and that's that's forever.
Right. Guys, I think they're about to kick us out of the library. So we should be...
This is the library?
We should
I thought
be,
this was Hooters.
we should be wrapping this up. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Check Engine Podcast. If you don't like us, that's fine. You might know somebody who does or who would, so please share us as well. Stay tuned for future episodes.
We got the email.
Yes, also catch us
checkenginepodcast@gmail.com. For now, we'll see how this goes. We will get social media accounts hopefully up as soon as possible before this post. If not before this post, hopefully soon after. But the email is live right now. So yeah, checkenginepodcast, all one word, @gmail.com.
And again, tell us about your first car. Why was it special? And we'll talk to you guys again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.